Hello, and welcome to Season 3 of the Working While Homeschooling podcast, the podcast for workingwhilehomeschooling.com, where our mission is to help homeschooling parents make money, maybe even have a career, while continuing to homeschool and without losing their sanity. My name is Julie. I am your host and resident career coach today. I want to thank you all for joining us and listening in. I hope you're doing well. Our guest for today's episode is Katie, who is running her own Homeschool YouTube channel. And our episode today is brought to you by Homeschool Magnet. Check them out at homeschoolmagnet.com. So can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Yeah, so my name is Katie. I am a second generation homeschool mom to 6 crazy, beautiful kiddos. And my kids are 11, 10, 9, 8, 3, and 2 years old. So never a dull moment in our house whatsoever. I've been homeschooling and working most of my homeschool career and doing various different jobs and activities for money on the side. But I kind of landed on my dream job in the past year and a half, 2 years or so, and that is getting to help fellow homeschool moms, primarily through my YouTube channel, and then more recently have started to speak at homeschool conventions and be asked to do webinars and things like that. So it's been a very wild adventure, but I wouldn't change it for the world.
So how in the world did you get into the YouTube thing? I'm assuming you just didn't pick up a camera one day and just start shooting, or did you?
Not at all. If you would have told me I was going to do YouTube 10 years ago, I would have laughed in your face. Yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience. I think part of it stemmed from attending homeschool conventions. As a homeschool mom, if you've ever attended a convention, you know that it's like your lifeline. You look forward to it. It's that piece of encouragement after maybe a long year, or you're looking to get new curriculum, or you're looking to get your questions answered. I was attending a convention and I was watching all these parents come in either drained and needing a pick-me-up or excited but lots of questions because they were brand new. And I realized that a lot of these people would walk away encouraged, but then they wouldn't get another dose of this until the following year. And I just realized as homeschool parents, at least for myself, I know I need that encouragement and that advice and that input on a more regular basis. So I really made it my mission that I wanted to help homeschool parents. So I started doing that. So I was talking with people one-on-one, realized that in order to not take too much time out of my family's time, I could only meet or talk with 1 or 2 people at a time. And I noticed that they were asking a lot of the same questions though. And it occurred to me, I was like, what if I just filmed my answer to these questions? But I was like, maybe I could help more than 2 people at a time. This crazy idea, it just seemed the easiest to put it up on YouTube, and it took off. I expected maybe a dozen people here or there to watch it. And now we average about 10,000 views a month. So it's definitely gone way beyond what I ever thought it was going to go.
Oh my goodness, that is a lot more than 2 people at a time, isn't it? That's funny that you say that, because that's actually why I started as a career coach, started doing courses, because I realized, there's always at a certain point I was completely maxed out. Like I couldn't physically work 1 more hour. I was also repeating myself 4 times in a row. I was saying the same thing. And I was like, there has got to be a better way. So I started recording. I tried to do my classes live, and the time was never good for anybody. It turned into my courses. So it was kind of the same thing. How can I help more people in less time?
Yeah. How can I multiply my efforts is what I'm always looking for, is make a little bit of effort, go a lot longer.
Exactly. That's actually what I say to myself too. How can I multiply myself? How can I multiply what I'm doing? Let's say I'm interested. I think, hey, that's a great idea. I want to do a YouTube channel. How does someone get started with this? Are there certain courses or training that you would personally recommend? Because there's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah, there is. That's probably the hardest part, is weeding through and figuring out what is worth your time and money and what is not. I did not take any formal courses, although I do have some picked out that I am planning on taking here in the next few months. But I would say, if you are not in the financial or time position to do a lot of formal training, you could go through trial and error, but if you want to significantly reduce your learning curve, there are a lot of free or very inexpensive resources out there. One is a podcast and YouTube channel called Video Creators. It's put on by Tim Schmoyer, who's a resident expert in the area of YouTube and how to do YouTube. And he's actually a homeschool graduate as well as a homeschool parent. So that, and then I also read YouTube Secrets by Sean Cannell and Benji Travis, and that was really helpful in getting started. But I think the big thing is you have to remember it is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. You're not going to start a YouTube channel tomorrow and, all of a sudden be making tons of money within 30 days, but it's well worth it and it's an investment. And so, yeah, I think it's just neat to share your passion and then to be able to make an income off of that.
Oh, absolutely. So let's talk logistics.
Mm-hmm.
You have 6 kids, and it's not like the 2-year-old can be self-sufficient.
Right.
I remember my kids were 2, and I could barely go to the bathroom. So how in the world do you get work done and homeschool littles, especially?
Yeah, it is not easy at all. I think the big thing is that I have learned, thankfully, from past experiences with other businesses, I learned early on that I needed to block off work time and really make it clear to my family when work time was versus family time. And part of that was to reduce the guilt. When I was with my family, I was constantly thinking about the work I was supposed to be doing. And when I was with work, I was like, I should be with my kids. And it was just this tug of war that was exhausting. So I started carving out time. And so I actually have 3 chunks of time. One is early morning before any of the kids wake up. I do wake up at 5 a.m. It is not fun. And I want to make it very clear to everybody who's listening that I am 100% out of the waking up in the middle of the night stage with my children. So if you are still in that stage, please don't try waking up at 5 a.m. unless it brings you much joy. I am able to go to bed early and wake up early. That's not for everybody. So I get a big chunk of work done before they wake up. And then I have a second chunk of work that I get done during the time that they're kind of up and getting going for the day. We've kind of just tried to make systems in place that make it easy for the kids to know exactly what's next. They don't need to come to me for everything, not to say that they don't still do that, but they kind of know what's next. The older kids know how to help the younger ones. So they kind of get started on their own. They wake up to their alarms. For the older kids, they get themselves dressed. For the babies, we try to make sure that their things are accessible to them, either that they can get in and out of their drawers easily, or maybe setting out their clothes the night before so that they can go ahead and get dressed, make their bed, and they get started on those things. And while they do that, I have my second chunk of work time. And then the final work chunk time is right after school from about 3 to 4 o'clock. I'll just kind of wrap up things for the day. Not to say there's never an evening when I'm working, but I try to keep work to a minimal in the evening. So that's more dedicated to family, church, other extracurricular activities.
Right. So that you just mentioned extracurriculars, the dreaded socialization question. So your kids out of the house, you're not locking them in a closet. What do your kids do?
So we're involved with a lot of different church activities. And we also do, this sounds very funny, but we actually do competitive BB gun shootings. My kids are learning. It's a fantastic way to learn gun safety, to be involved. But one tip I would give, and this isn't possible for every family or for every age and stage, so please take that with a grain of salt. But sometimes when you are feeling pulled in so many different directions, you have to examine, not sometimes, all the time, you need to examine what you actually can do. So we wanted our kids to have opportunities to be involved in things, but I cannot have 6 kids involved in 6 totally separate activities. That's just not feasible. We really try to find activities that either interest all of them or that they can all be involved in at one time, or at least a chunk of them. So usually the babies are not, they're not shooting BB gun, I promise.
Yeah.
But yes, no, we're not doing any of that. But yeah, so we try to look for things that we can be involved in as a family or in chunks to kind of make it more manageable.
Homeschooling. Are there particular curriculum or resources that you like that make this working while homeschooling life easier for you?
Yeah. One thing I have found is that with homeschooling curriculum, a lot of people think that if you want to manage work and homeschooling, that you automatically have to outsource a great deal of the homeschooling, whether that's co-ops or tutors or online schooling. And those are all fantastic options. We actually use all 3 of those, but it doesn't doesn't have to be solely that. So we do actually do the bulk of the curriculum back and forth between me being the teacher and then being the student, but we're just really strategic about it. We take the time to see what's the priority. So currently the priority is reading. I have some struggling readers. I have kids who struggle with dyslexia. That's a big struggle, and it's a big point in our schooling. If you can learn how to read, you can learn anything, right? So I try to pour more of my energy into that and then outsource things that are easily outsourced, where it doesn't really make a big difference whether it's me or someone else doing it with them. So they do teaching textbooks for math. That's a huge lifesaver, being able to do it completely on the computer.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot say enough good things about that program. And then we also try to, again, group together anything we can. So history, science, Bible, geography, social studies, those kind of things, those we all do together. So I'm multiplying my efforts that way as well.
Okay, great. Are there any particular programs that you would recommend people take a look at besides teaching textbooks or resources that make it user friendly?
Yeah, definitely. For science, we love to use Apologia. It's very open and go. I don't have to do a lot of prep work with it, which is always a blessing. I'm always looking for open and go curriculums. We also use Story of the World for history. And I will say, don't be afraid to use online resources, free online resources. So we actually use Typing Club, which is totally, or typing.com, which is totally free typing program. Extramath.com, which is also a free program that helps your kids work on their math facts. And it's like 5 minutes a day on the computer. And those are great things that your kids can do semi-independently while you're working with other kids. So the task, or the thing for me, is to always make sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. Because if I am working with one child and the other child finishes something early and they don't know what's next, I lose them, like physically. They run.
Yeah.
And you spend 90% of your time herding cats and bringing them back in, trying to get them reset and refocused. So it's always like, okay, if we get done with this, here's kind of a list of things you can go to next. Or, hey, you can go pick up your book and do independent reading. So I don't know. It's just all about doing that. So a lot of those free online resources are my go-to for that kind of thing.
Now, what are the kind of questions that you mentioned, you have a lot of newcomers come to you. What are the kind of questions that you get asked most often when people find out you're both working and homeschooling?
They regularly ask me, how do you do it all? Right. And I frequently say, I don't.
Do they give you look like, oh my gosh, weird?
Yeah. Well, initially when they hear I do YouTube, they're like, oh, that's nice. And they say, how much time does that take? And they assume, my videos are in general, usually not more than 20 minutes. So they assume that that's maybe a 2-hour job a week or something like that. And so they'll ask me and I say, well, I spend about 20 hours, sometimes 30 hours a week working on it. Now that is working on speaking engagements and other things as well, but all of it together. And their jaw hits the floor and they're like, how? And I think for me, a big part of it is that I don't do it all. Number one, my house is it is clean, but it is not white glove clean. There is dust on my ceiling fans that I've been meaning to get to for quite a while, but we're okay with that. We don't have gourmet meals for dinner every night. We keep things pretty simple, but I think it's really about trying to think through reducing the amount of mental energy used. A lot of people think about their financial resources or their time resources, but for me, I am always thinking about my mental resources and what tasks can I put systems in place to reduce the amount of mental energy needed. Like meal planning is a fantastic example. You can spend a lot of time every single week sitting down and meal planning and basically starting from scratch every time you sit down each week and spend a lot of mental energy. Or if you don't meal plan, you'll spend a lot of mental energy every single day going, what's for dinner? I don't know. And so I sit down and I meal plan 3 months at a time and I spend that mental energy once.
That's impressive. I thought I was doing good. I meal plan once a week and I thought I was doing good, but 3 months at a time, that's kind of impressive.
Well, it's all about simplifying it. So for breakfast every Monday for 3 months, so that gives us enough time to rotate and not get too tired of it. But every Monday we have the same thing for breakfast or for lunch. And actually we used to do it for breakfast that way. Now for breakfast, I just kind of have a breakfast station and the kids go get their own. But for lunch, we have cheese quesadillas every single Monday. On Tuesdays, we automatically have, sandwiches or whatever it is. And so we have those divided out by days so So those are just on repeat. So I never have to think about those. And then I create categories for all the other days. So Wednesday night is our Bible study night. So we're going to be out of the house. So it's always a crock pot meal on Wednesdays. And Tuesdays are always Taco Tuesday. There's some kind of Mexican or whatever. And just kind of creating those categories really helps make the process so much easier.
Yeah. And I could see how that would trickle down into like your grocery shopping because you're going to be buying the same thing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And you can also, it also trickles down in saving you time because when you're having the same thing over and over again, then what I do is I buddy up one of my kids with me. They get to be my special helper for the day and they help me cook for the day. That's one of the things. They love being in the kitchen with me. And now it's to the point where I don't actually make any lunches at all, really, because the kids can do that on their own and they're making it. So I'm doing other things in the kitchen while they're cooking lunch, and obviously according to age appropriateness there, but it's really cool to be able to, again, multiply those efforts by getting them involved. And when you make things repeatable, then they can master it.
Right. Yeah. Mine are 12 and 14 now. And I will say that I had recently, we've gotten to the point where they are both in charge of dinner one night a week. And like, I do nothing except do you have all your ingredients and put it on the grocery list and then I'll buy it for you. But if it's not on the grocery list, I'm not buying it. Like I don't even grocery check for them, like in the pantry. So that has been amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a game changer.
oh my gosh. Cause we do like on your own, like eat a sandwich for lunch and, cereal, if you want something for breakfast, you're on your own. I've got to that point where I don't scramble eggs. I don't do anything for them in the morning anymore. And like my husband will generally grill or do something once a weekend, on the weekend. So that's like 3 nights a week. I don't cook dinner and it's glorious. Dinner is
that is my goal. I have 6 kids.
Yeah.
I would say I have 6 kids and my goal is to one day just have one meal that I make, which I will probably phone in as an easy like chicken nuggets or something. And each other day that they each have one night a week that they cook dinner, but we'll see what happens.
That's great. Now, as we wrap up our time here, do you have any kind of words of encouragement or advice for those out there that may be listening?
Yeah. So there's so many things that come to mind. I think primarily the biggest thing is to remember that if God has called you to this, and by to this, I mean your work, your homeschooling, whatever you're going through. If he's called you to do this, then he'll equip you for it. And I think we can stop panicking and sweating. How are we going to get it all done? And because we can't do it all by any stretch of the imagination. And instead of me trying to decide what's going to happen, I just like to pray and ask for guidance for that and know that what needs to get done will get done. And sometimes that is setting aside all work and focusing on dealing with a hard issue with your child that they're going through. And other days it's getting no homeschooling done and just focusing on work. So we can have that balance there and rest at ease knowing that he's got it.
Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Now, as we wrap up our episode today, I want to thank you all for listening in. There are a ton of great podcasts out there, but you chose to spend your time here with me, so thank you. In the show notes, you're going to find the links to my site, workingwhilehomeschooling.com, and all of the great ways that you can connect with us online. If you enjoyed today's podcast, consider becoming one of our listener supporters by following the link in our show notes. A small monthly donation helps us continue with great content and interviews like you're hearing here today on the Working While Homeschooling podcast. Your positive online reviews, subscribing to our podcast, sharing it with your friends is all greatly appreciated as well. If you know someone that you think would be a great guest of our podcast, please let me know at julie@workingwhilehomeschooling.com. And a very special thank you goes out to Homeschool Magnet at homeschoolmagnet.com for supporting this episode and our Working While Homeschooling parents. Thank you for listening in today. Thank you for Katie for being our guest. And everyone, please make sure you join us in our Facebook group for continuing conversation on today's topic and beyond. I look forward to seeing each of you soon at our next podcast for Working While Homeschooling.